Most men treat the first text like it's a test they can fail, and in a strange way, that belief is exactly what makes them fail it. Here's the uncomfortable truth: the anxiety isn't coming from her. It never was. It's coming from a story you've been telling yourself about what her silence would mean if she didn't reply the way you hoped. And once you see that clearly, something shifts, because the fix was never about finding the perfect words to send. Most advice out there gets this completely backwards. It hands you templates, openers, proven lines, as if the right sentence could patch over an insecure foundation. It can't. A man who's settled in himself could send almost anything reasonably respectful and it would land fine, because what she's actually responding to was never the text. It's the energy sitting underneath it. That's the part nobody talks about, and it's the part that actually changes everything once you understand it. So here's what's coming: the real difference between a man who texts from anxiety and a man who texts from security, why the silence after you hit send matters more than the message itself, and how purpose, not tricks, not games, is what quietly removes all the pressure from something that was never supposed to feel this heavy in the first place. Before we get into it, drop a comment below with the last time you overthought a text for way longer than it deserved. You're not the only one, and you're about to see exactly why it happened. If this is useful, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. There's a strange kind of pain in staring at a blank text box for 20 minutes, rewriting the same sentence 5 different ways. Most men call this being careful. It isn't. It's discomfort dressed up as strategy, a quiet unwillingness to sit with the possibility that she might not text back. Attraction psychology has a name for this pattern, and it shows up everywhere once you start reading women's body language and behavior the same way you read your own hesitation. The man who agonizes over a message isn't protecting himself, he's outsourcing his sense of value to her reply. Watch closely and the difference becomes obvious. An anxious man needs the outcome guaranteed before he's willing to act. He wants proof, in advance, that sending the text won't cost him anything. A secure man just doesn't operate that way. He sends it because he wants to, full stop, the same way he'd wave at a friend across the street without calculating whether the wave would be returned. That distinction, wanting to versus needing to, is one of the clearest signs of attraction psychology at work, and it separates the men who read women's body language signals with ease from the ones who freeze the second uncertainty shows up. Here's a personal way to think about it. Imagine two men holding the exact same phone, typing the exact same, "Hey, how's your week going?" One sends it in 4 seconds flat, the other sits on it for half an hour, reading and rereading, hunting for a version that can't possibly be misread. The words on the screen are identical. What's different is everything underneath them. One man's self-worth is already settled before he hits send, the other's is waiting on her reply to tell him if he's allowed to feel good today. That gap between the two doesn't come from confidence tricks or clever phrasing, it comes from where a man is drawing his security from in the first place. This is where dating advice for men usually goes wrong. It hands out scripts and openers like the words themselves are the fix, when the real issue sits underneath the sentence, not inside it. A man who's genuinely settled in himself could send almost any reasonably respectful text and it would land fine, because what she's actually responding to isn't the message, it's the energy behind it. Learning how to read women, and just as importantly how to read yourself in these moments, starts with noticing whether you're texting from abundance or from a hole you're hoping she'll fill. So the real question was never, what should I text her first? It was always, why am I so afraid to? And that question, the one most men skip right past on their way to obsessing over wording, is exactly where this gets interesting, because the fear doesn't disappear the moment you hit send. It just moves. It goes somewhere else entirely, somewhere most men never think to look. Sending the text was never the hard part. Anyone can press a button. The real test starts the second the message shows delivered and nothing happens after that, no typing bubble, no read receipt, no reply. That silence is where a man's actual emotional control gets exposed, far more than anything he typed. Reading body language and reading a lack of response might seem like opposite skills, but they draw from the same well, the ability to sit still inside uncertainty without needing it resolved immediately. Most men fail this part loudly. They check their phone every 4 minutes like it might have quietly buzzed without their notice. They reread the sent message, hunting for a typo that might explain the delay, or worse, they start drafting a follow-up, just in case it didn't send. None of that is discipline, it's anxiety wearing a productive-looking mask. Attraction psychology is blunt about this. Chasing a response is one of the most transparent signs of attraction anxiety a man can broadcast, and women pick up on that unsettled energy even through a scream, in how fast the next message comes or how it's worded. Contrast that with the man who sends the text and genuinely goes back to his day, not performing indifference, actually living it. He finishes his workout, gets through his emails, calls a friend back, and the phone sits there doing nothing to his mood either way. Napoleon Hill talked about a definiteness of purpose so strong that outside circumstances lose their grip on a man's state, and that's precisely what's happening here on a small, ordinary scale. Reply in 10 minutes or reply in 6 hours, he was fine before the text and he's fine after it. That steadiness is the whole game. Here's a practical way to build it if it doesn't come naturally yet. Set your phone face down after sending a text you care about, and give yourself one task to complete before you're allowed to check it. Dishes, a walk, a chapter of a book, doesn't matter what, just something that demands actual attention. Small reps like that retrain the reflex. Books like The Way of the Superior Man and No More Mr. Nice Guy both circle this same idea from different angles, that a man's center of gravity has to live inside himself, not out in someone else's phone. Because here's what nobody mentions about this stage, the waiting isn't actually about her at all. It's a mirror. And once a man notices what that mirror is showing him, the next question becomes impossible to avoid, not whether she'll reply, but what he's actually saying once she does. There's a version of texting that tries to prove something, and there's a version that simply says something. The first one is easy to spot once you know what to look for: long paragraphs explaining context nobody asked for, jokes that overreach trying to land, messages that read like a resume for why she should be interested. That kind of text isn't communication, it's a performance aimed at controlling how she perceives him, and attraction psychology tends to work against performances like that rather than for them. The second version looks almost boring by comparison, and that's exactly the point. Saw this and thought of you, with a picture attached. Good luck today, before something she mentioned. 4 words, 5 words, done. Nothing over-explained, nothing padded out to seem more thoughtful than it needed to be. Reading women's body language signals in person works the same way. The most attractive signals are usually the smallest ones, a genuine half-smile instead of a performed laugh, because genuine things don't need to be loud to be felt. A short message backed by real ease reads as authentic. A long message backed by anxiety reads as exactly what it is, no matter how well-crafted the sentences are. This is worth sitting with, because most dating advice for men pushes in the opposite direction: texting formulas, optimal message lengths, clever lines to open with, when the actual differentiator was never the content of the text. It was whether the man sending it needed that text to do something for him, or whether he was just a guy passing along a thought because he felt like it. Think about how this plays out with a friend versus a crush. Nobody agonizes over a text to their best friend, "You around later," gets sent without a second thought, and it works fine because there's no anxiety riding on the reply. The second a man starts treating a text to a woman he's interested in differently than he'd treat that same message to a friend, he's already tipped his hand. He's asking the words to carry weight they were never built to carry, and she can feel that weight even if she couldn't explain why the message feels slightly off. Which raises an interesting problem: if trying too hard is what gives a man away, then what actually happens when he stops trying to manage the outcome altogether? Does the mystery disappear the moment he texts first, or was that assumption wrong from the start? There's an old piece of dating advice that refuses to die: texting first ruins the mystery, hands her the frame, gives away too much too soon. It sounds reasonable on the surface, which is probably why so many men still believe it. But attraction psychology tells a more precise story: it was never the act of texting first that killed mystery. It was the anxiety wrapped around it. 2 men can send the exact same opening line, and one destroys his own mystique while the other builds it, purely based on what's underneath the message. Here's where it gets clearer: mystery was never about withholding information or timing your replies with a stopwatch. That's a game, and games are exhausting to maintain and easy to see through. Real mystery comes from not needing to over-explain yourself, from a woman genuinely not knowing everything about a man's intentions because he isn't handing them all over in one anxious paragraph. Reading women's body language in person works the same way. The people who hold attention aren't the ones sharing everything, they're the ones whose expressions leave a little room for curiosity. Picture two texts side by side. One says, "Hey, this is going to sound random but I saw this place and thought you'd like it. No worries if you're busy, just thought I'd mention it, hope your week's going well too." The other says, "This place made me think of you." Same intention, wildly different effect. The first one is a man narrating his own anxiety in real time, over-explaining to manage how she might feel about it. The second one just exists. It doesn't ask for permission. That's not a technique, that's just what a person sounds like when they're not scared of the moment. This connects back to something worth remembering from the earlier point about waiting. A man who isn't managing outcomes doesn't need to manage his wording either. The over-explaining, the disclaimers, the "no worries if not" tacked onto the end of every message, all of that is the same anxious impulse showing up in a different form, still trying to guarantee an outcome before it's earned. Drop the guarantee seeking, and the words naturally get shorter, cleaner, and far more interesting to read on the other end. So if texting first was never the problem, and over-explaining was never really about mystery, the question becomes something bigger: what was the man actually protecting by adding all that extra noise to a simple message in the first place? Somewhere underneath every over-explained message, every hour spent rewriting a "hey," there's usually a man who's texting to fill a gap rather than to express a genuine thought. Boredom does this. Loneliness does this. A slow evening with nothing else pulling his attention does this. And when a text comes from that place, it carries an invisible request hidden inside it: please respond, please make me feel better, please give me something to do with this restlessness. Women pick up on that request even when it's never spoken out loud, the same way they pick up on subtle signs of attraction or discomfort in someone's posture before a word is said. A man with actual direction in his life doesn't text from that gap, because there isn't much of a gap to fill. His days are already occupied by something that matters to him, a goal he's building toward, work he cares about, people and interests that exist entirely outside of whether she replies. When he texts her, it's an addition to an already full life, not a patch for an empty one. That's the entire difference between "I'm reaching out because I want to" and "I'm reaching out because I need to," and it comes through in tone whether he says it directly or not. This is worth being concrete about. A man who spends his evenings working towards something, building a skill, training for something physical, making progress on a project he actually cares about, has a different relationship with his phone than a man who's scrolling and waiting. Books like Deep Work by Cal Newport or The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson aren't dating books at all, and that's precisely why they're useful here. They're about building a life substantial enough that texting a woman becomes a small, low-stakes part of it, not the main event. Purpose does something else too: it removes the temptation to check the phone every few minutes, because attention is already spent somewhere. A man deep into something meaningful genuinely forgets to check for a while, and that forgetting isn't an act. It's the natural result of a full life. Dating advice for men obsesses over what to say in the text, when the more useful project is almost always what a man is doing with the rest of his day. And that leads somewhere worth pausing on, because purpose fixes the pressure, but it doesn't yet answer the last piece of the puzzle: how does a man actually find the tone that avoids being too eager on one side and too distant on the other? Every man who's ever hesitated over a first text has run into this same tension without naming it: text too dry and it reads as disinterest, text too eager and it reads as needy. Both extremes send the same underlying signal, that something is off balance underneath the words. Attraction psychology points to a specific sweet spot here, one that has almost nothing to do with clever phrasing and everything to do with two things existing at once: genuine warmth, and a complete lack of pressure riding on the reply. Think about the two failure modes separately for a second. The overly dry text, "hey, and nothing else," days of silence between messages, zero personality showing through, reads as a man protecting himself so hard that there's no actual person left in the conversation for her to connect with. The overly eager text does the opposite. It's warm, sure, but it's warm in a way that feels like it's asking for something back immediately, like every message is a small test she's expected to pass. Reading women's body language signals works on the same spectrum, too guarded and there's no connection, too intense and it reads as pressure instead of genuine interest. The balance sits in the middle, and it's simpler than it sounds once it's named: casual tone, low pressure, real warmth. "This made me think of you," carries warmth without demanding anything. "Hope you're doing well," said because it's actually true, not because it's a safe filler line, carries the same thing. The words aren't doing tricks. They're just honest, delivered by someone who isn't scared of how they'll land. This is the same balance found in men who are genuinely well-liked in every part of their life, not just dating, the friend who can be warm and present without ever feeling like he needs something from the room. That balance doesn't come from a script. It comes from everything covered up to this point: security instead of impulse, calm instead of chasing, purpose instead of a gap to fill. Once those pieces are actually in place, the right tone in a text stops being something a man has to think about. It just shows up on its own, because it was never really about the text to begin with. So here's the real question you need to sit with: are you going to keep rewriting that same text for the 20th time tonight, or are you finally going to notice what that hesitation has actually been about this whole time? Because it was never about her. It was never about finding the right words. It was about a man who hasn't yet decided that his worth doesn't hinge on a reply. Think about the last text you were too scared to send. What would have happened if you'd sent it exactly the way it first came to mind? No rewrites, no overthinking, no disclaimers tacked onto the end. Chances are, nothing bad. Chances are, you'd have saved yourself 20 minutes of anxiety over 4 words that were never that deep to begin with. That's the gap between where you are and where this version of you could be, and closing it doesn't take a script, it takes a decision. Stop treating the first text like a performance you have to get right. Start treating it like what it actually is: a man with a full life, reaching out because he wants to, not because he needs something back. That shift alone changes how every message you send from here on out is going to feel, and more importantly, how it's going to land. If this hits something real for you, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is exactly the kind of thing we break down here, week after week, the parts of attraction and body language most men never get taught, and never think to look for on their own.